Welcome to the Dorky Readings and Bloopers, featuring Blood Phoenix Rebirth, first book of the Broken World series. Chapter 15. Pressing my lips to his briefly made both men tense, but I didn't let it bother me. Besides, I kept the kiss short and nowhere near erotic. Afterwards, I whispered an almost silent thank you, and he flushed. James took my hand and led me into his packed, black convertible. My grandfather's old army bag lay on top of a few boxes and other bags. He opened the door for me, held my hand as I sat. Stiff and silent, he pulled us onto an old back highway out of the city, and we drove in a tense, silent car for the next half hour. I flipped the small green stone in my pocket over and over and over, worrying it. James didn't strike me as an overly jealous type, especially in a relationship with Faya, but I couldn't escape the heaviness in the car. We arrived at an old shabby motel, where James parked and went for the office without pause. The motel was tattered, but not quite run down. Lights were out here and there, and cracks littered the long rectangular building, but I'd seen much worse. My apartment qualified as worse. All of the doors were painted a faded red that might have rivaled my hair when new. Minutes later, James came back and grabbed some stuff, including my duffel, and stalked to a room by the concrete stairs. I followed slowly. My bag lay on a twin-sized bed and a black duffel on the other. They both looked odd against the cream color and faded pinks of the floral spread. A dingy orange armchair sat in a corner next to an awkward square table. James went back out the door and put up the soft top on his car. The car beeped as he locked it. I stood in the doorway, waiting for him. His black eyes peered at me from under a gentle wave of dark hair. He looked human, in fact, more human than he had 2 weeks ago. I held his face in my hands and stepped closer to him. Missing him hadn't crossed my mind until that moment. I actually had. Something flashed through his features too quickly for me to appreciate, but bits of it remained in his eyes. I'd seen it in him before. James looked vulnerable, breakable, and damn near defeated. I missed you. I said it twice, once as Bianca and once as myself. But he didn't believe me. That was obvious as he pushed me inside, closed the door, and shoved me to the nearest bed in one swift movement. The same move I used on Bowden in the bathroom. With his hands clamped around my neck, I gasped but drew no air. I struggled until I realized there was no burning need. I'd have to ask about that. He released me, but did not retreat. James touched me slowly, putting his hands on the soft flesh of my waist where my shirt exposed my pale skin. He bent to brush his mouth against my throat and nibble at my neck with small, tender pricks of his fangs, until I quivered against him. I finally whispered, "Have you managed to feed?" He shook his head against the inside of my neck and resumed his nibbling. His mouth sent these illicit and sexy messages to any part of my body that would listen. I wanted to tear off his clothes right then, and that really made me want him to stop. I wedged my hand against his chest, in a mild attempt to keep him at bay. We really should go. James pushed his mouth against mine. I didn't feel a whisper of fang in the kiss. You taste like him. I didn't know what to say. After a few heartbeats, he spoke again. Did he glamour you? I gulped back a rubber ball in my throat, and he pricked me with his fangs again. Yeah, I said. I knew he would. Why send him then? He was the safest option for those that I had to choose from. I knew they'd come back and try to take you, but I had to go. He mostly behaved. Mostly. He let out a laugh and his breath made me shiver. Mostly is good for him. I'll have to teach you how to manage fairy glamour. I think I glamoured him back. I figured he should know that too, with the type of shit going on. He stilled and eased away, standing at the edge of the bed, leaving me cold and exposed. Tell me what happened. I told him. All of it, well, minus some of the more X-rated stuff. He stood above me for a long minute before he said, I fucked up. I should have waited to change you, put you through the normal regimens, or ignored you completely, but I couldn't do it. I was selfish and I wanted you. You drive me crazy, did you know that? You've been driving me crazy for 24 years. I wasn't even born yet. Yeah, but I knew who you were in there, in Tatiana's womb. After 6,000 years, I couldn't wait anymore. He smoothed his hand down the front of him, looking like his normal, wicked self once again. She's put out an order for you. She's given me a week to bring you in myself before she sends someone to collect us both. And I probably don't want to know what happens then. Huh. No need to say who she was. The Queen put a bounty on my head. What other kinds of trouble would that bring my way? No, you don't. But what she will do to us, if I bring you in, won't be much better. I hope you're a quick study because there's a lot I'm going to have to teach you before you can meet her. You have to understand, Faye has been digressing, especially during the past few decades, and she's powerful, so it's not pleasant. It's like someone is playing with a dial inside of her, making her more sadistic and more needy. How did someone who killed babies become more sadistic? You couldn't get much worse than that. Or maybe I took it a little personal. I don't think so. Why does she care that I exist? I mean, does she have to have every vampire ever made under her thumb? The look in his eyes scared me, and he simply said, yes. I sighed and let my shoulders slump in frustration. Is there any way I can get out of this? What do you think? God, I don't know. I don't know a fucking thing about vampires apparently, except that I am one. And that's not real helpful. I closed my eyes, angry and frustrated all over again. My entire life had been disrupted, and my world kept getting more and more unpredictable. And my body had gone haywire, hungry and tired and horny in crazy cycles, especially since that glamour situation. My insides full of these mixed signals, I didn't know which to trust. James kissed my throat, squeezing my breast. Lines of heat and pleasure engulfed my core. The warmth of his touch crawled beneath my shirt to expose my belly. He nipped my flesh with his fangs, like butterfly kisses, making me whimper and rub my legs together. Unaware of his hands, the pressure of my waistband loosened. And the nearly silent pop of a button being undone cleared the sex in my head. In a rush, I sat up and grabbed his hands. Don't, I said. He shushed me and covered my mouth with his. The kiss drowned my senses in strawberries, pure and sweet and nothing like the others. The comforter met my back with a small thump, and James slid between my thighs, leaving my jeans in place. Then an image burst through me, and my back bowed abruptly. Ecstasy tightened my every muscle. His fangs brushed the hollow of my throat, and I mimicked another of Bianca's back-arching moans. She wrapped our legs around his waist and thrust our hips against his. James eagerly returned the favor. Building pleasure erupted in an overwhelming rush, a completely different league from the glamour. Then James sank his fangs into my neck, and I cried out, clawing at his back. The pleasure cheated for long, agonizing minutes before my body bucked and shuddered beneath his. I twitched, and James hovered above me with a smug smile of satisfaction, like the one he gave me every time he caught me off guard, or the time he tricked me into drinking poisoned wine. The one that made the scar on his chin pop. That controlling bastard. Words refused to form at my lips, even though I really wanted to wipe that smug look off his face. James licked a spot of my blood from the corner of his mouth. I'm beginning to really enjoy that power of yours. You were blocking it before, I said. He ran his nose across mine. Yes. A gust of breath escaped me, and my whole body buzzed with its own defiant satisfaction. James bent and breathed in my ear. I'll let you recover before we get down to some real business. That cocky son of a bitch. Abusing my powers and... Fuck, I couldn't even say it in my head. Not prude in the least bit. A little shy, yes, but not prude. And what James just did, and he did that as a human. My God. Regaining the ability to sit up took me several minutes. James was on the other bed, gazing up at the ceiling. I grabbed a change of pants and cleaned myself up before I did much else. Much to my dismay, what I grabbed were lowrider jeans, and my belly remained exposed. He touched me as I stepped out of the bathroom, his fingers warm. I shoved him off and grabbed a hoodie. So what now? Now it's time to feed. James stoned his leather jacket and went for the door. Well, come on. I'm not hungry. A blatant lie, but the cold hunger didn't consume me, and my conscience needed a reprieve. You'll learn rather quickly that you're always hungry. James brought me into town, and we separated at a small park downtown. I waited for him on the bench, contrary to his suggestion. Bar hoppers filled the streets. Each of their pulses danced along my fangs. A fresh-faced girl stepped out of a building, red scarf fluttering around her shoulders as she lit a cigarette. She leaned her head back and blew smoke rings above the passers-by. Menthol and tobacco mingled with blood. After a minute, a gentleman sat on the bench beside me, and he didn't smell of alcohol, but of meat and blood. But still, he didn't smell quite right, and I couldn't put words to it. A big man, tall and broad in the shoulders and chest, seemed feral, although he appeared composed. Besides his bigness, the man could have disappeared into a crowd. He didn't show any physical threatening signs, but danger clung to him. I smiled at him, stood, and made a slow escape. He merely sat and watched me. Another 2 slow steps back, and I froze. A strong, slender arm immobilized both of mine, and a hand covered my mouth. The man on the bench stood, pulled a syringe from his pants pocket, and tapped the small plastic casing. He struggled to move, but couldn't. What the fuck? Not even an elbow to the ribs, a stomp on the foot, or a bite. A power, like lukewarm water, slipped over me. He stuck me in the neck. A cold rush burst through my veins. That was obvious as he pushed me inside, closed the door, and shoved me to the nearest. That was obvious. He stood above me for a long minute before he finally looked at me. James easily. What do you think? This stuff. Stock much?